Hi, I'm Pankti Mehta.
And I'm Arakali. Wherever you're listening to us, we hope you're doing well.
India's newest airline is facing rough winds, seemingly rattled by pilot exodus. Mark Martin, founder and CEO of Martin Consulting, an aviation consultancy, minces no words on today's episode. He says this is a symptom of the airline's mismanagement and tells us how they seem to have painted themselves into a corner. How did they get here? Forbes India's Manu Balachandran and Mark Martin take us through the ride.
To understand the problem with Akasa, we have to look at the way the airline is structured and also look at how they have their operations planning in place. Now, when you're operating a brand new type of aircraft, such as the 737 MAX, which we have to be mindful has had several problems over the last 5 years, one of the biggest issues is that the MAX has a pilot scarcity. You can get Airbus A320 pilots, you can get Boeing 737 NG pilots, but to get pilots trained on the MAX, that's a bit of an issue. The reason being is because globally across the world, we have seen this propagate very prominently from MAX operators such as Ryanair, Southwest Airlines, Smartwings, and several others, that pilots are collectively reluctant to fly the MAX. And this is because not just of the MCAS, which was reported before, but recent issues with the rudder has also prompted industry-wide aversion to flying the MAX. Now, where Akasa is very unfortunate, because when they got up and running with their operations, clearly I think we know why they went for the MAX is because they got a ridiculously amazing deal on the MAX from Boeing. So it just made sense to buy something which is priced at 100 to buy it at a 25. So they went ahead with the deal. And I think somewhere it was very clear that Akasa was made aware of issues with the MAX, including the rudder issues. Now, my point on the pilot issue comes very clear from the fact that we are in a regulated environment where, unfortunately, the DGC in India wants a commander to give a 1-year notice if he wants to switch his job. A co-pilot in this country he has to give a 6-month notice. Okay. So at 6 months, if you give your notice, you are de-rostered from the airline. And the first thing that the airline does is gives you your NOC and your relieving letter to state very clear that we have no objection to you going and you're most welcome to leave. Now, at that stage, and I'm guessing if a commander has to give his notice 1 year in advance, then the notice should have ideally be given a year from now, which is September 2022 is when the notice would have been tendered to Akasa. During that time, I find it a little strange that Akasa should have approached the market for new pilots, but what were they doing if they're in this situation today? Akasa knew very well that they're adding in almost 10 to 15 aircraft a year, and operation planning indicates and suggests and mandates you start your crew recruitment well before that. So Akasa seems to be, and now increasingly appears to come up very clearly as an airline that pretty much is being run on a word that is very popular in India now across the world called jugaad. And that's something which is very, very unbecoming of an airline because it just shows that clearly they have no clue about how to run one. It seems very clear now that Akasa's actions over the last couple of weeks appear to be way desperate and more desperate than we can actually establish and imagine.
Interesting point, Mark. So, this also comes at a time when Akasa is looking to buy aircrafts upward of, I think, three-figure, more than 100 aircraft that they're planning to buy. And most likely it could be, like you said, they got a good deal with the MAX, 737 MAX. So, it could be possible that they will buy more of that. So how does that, play into Akasa's expansion going forward?
I think clearly Akasa has painted themselves into a corner on this one because I think the whole issue with Max, it's not just an Akasa issue; it's a global Max issue. Today, there are more pilots who are leaving the Max to fly Airbus A320 Neos or go back on the 77 NG. Akasa knew this all along when they were signing those deals to get 50 Maxes, and then now the promoter, Vinay Dubey is, he's reportedly mentioned that they'll come to three digits in terms of their fleet. All's great, wonderful, great, nicely done. But for you to come to three digits, you need to have the people to back your airline. Are you telling me with over 9 co founders in an airline, you couldn't figure out the basics of having a strategy to hire people, especially pilots? And that outgoing pilots, you now want to do everything to throw the book at them so that they do what? Come back and fly with you? Do they really want to use this? And now, what is so unfortunate is that with a goer that's pretty much right now in ICU, we have an Indigo that's staggering into medical support with the Max with their own 320 Neos being grounded. We still have an Air India, which is a monster in the basement, being created even as we speak. And now the last thing we needed was an Akasa going down, not because of rising fuel prices or risk of war or traveler passenger demand diminishing. No, none of those. The Akasa is going down because of their inability to plan for their growth. So you've made the great big deals. You've drunk the champagne. You've had the hors d'oeuvres. You had a wonderful time signing those deals. But guess what? Where's your back end planning?
What about the management? I mean, there is Vinay Dubey, there is Aditya Ghosh, who was with Indigo, and there's a whole bunch of people there that came together as co-founders. What does the current crisis say about their leadership?
I think what really comes is that eventually, here's something to help paint a better picture. In a kitchen, you need a chef. You need someone to do the dishes as well. You need somebody to go in a restaurant. You need somebody to go and serve the food. You need a guy who can take the order, and you need a pretty good busboy who could take guests to their table. So, Aditya Ghosh is a trained lawyer. He did an outstanding job in Indigo. Vinay Dubey was an outstanding commercial and a business revenue person. So I think individually, by their own capability, they're absolute sound and astute managers. So while you've got the manager, you've got the legal guy, you've got the guy who knows how to do the deal and close the deal, where do you have the people who have experience to run an airline? When it gets down and dirty, you need somebody to roll their sleeves up and get down and fix the house and get things back in order. In that same kitchen, you need a guy to do the dishes. You need a guy to chop the vegetables. You need somebody to cook. And I think, I'd be massacred for calling a pilot a cook, but I'd probably equate that in this scenario. What you've done is you've got the great restaurant going. You've got the managers. You've got the waiters. You've got the beautifully printed menus, but when you look at the kitchen, there's nobody there. And I think it takes more than, and rather it ideally, I think it by now it comes out very clear that it takes more than a Vinay Dubey and Aditya Ghosh to run an airline. You need sound managers with experience of running an airline to manage the helm. This isn't about individual gameplay. This isn't a Kobe Bryant or a Michael Jordan. This is the LA Lakers and this is a Chicago Bulls. And you can't. The Patrick Ewing could never win the whole playoffs for the New York Knicks. You needed a whole team of 5 people at full court press. And I think that's precisely the story here. You need a team. You can't have one person. It's like Sachin Tendulkar going to bat all alone with no players, and that's it. So it just doesn't make sense.
Interesting point, Mark. So the way I understand now is that troubles are only getting started and they have dug themselves a grave that's really deep. That's going to hurt them going forward.
Yeah,
isn't that right?
They've painted themselves into a corner. They're knee deep in this. This seems to be a last desperate move to get out. They should have thought about all of this about a year ago instead of trying to hog the limelight with self glory. Now they've made their bed, and now they need to lie in it. Sadly, unfortunately, I would not like to see an Akasa fold up, because eventually who suffers is the Indian traveler.
That's To The Point today. You can find all our podcasts on ForbesIndia.com and on your favorite podcast app. I'm Arakali.
And I'm Pankti Mehta.
Thank you for listening.